Begin today the Gemara on Daf Samaches Amud Aleph, right at the beginning of the Amud. It says the Bei Rabbi Shmuel Tana. So the Gemara here brings another source from Rabbi Shmuel for the halacha of the beginning of this Perek. First mission on this Perek began with the halacha of a Naira HaMayrasa. Naira HaMayrasa, after the first stage of marriage, so who could annul her Nedarim? Father and the husband together. The Gemara brought before from Rabbe a source from this, from the pasuk, that when it says in the Torah, "V'im hoya isiya leish nedarim alel," from that pasuk you learn out that it means that the father and the husband could annul her nedarim. But now the Gemara brings from Rabbi Shmuel another source. The Bei Rabbi Shmuel Tana, in the yeshiva of Rabbi Shmuel, they taught that in the end, the last pasuk in the parsha of Nedarim, there's an extra pasuk there. And it says, Ben ish le'ishtoi, ben av le'bitoi. So it puts together the halachas of Nedarim that apply between husband and wife, and between father and daughter. And that pasuk actually finishes off after that, Ben ureo beis aviyah, that when she's still a naira, she's in the father's house. So it's mentioning Ben ureo beis aviyah, meaning we're talking about the rights that the father has to nullify the daughter's Nedarim. And in the same pasuk it says, Ben ish le'ishtoi. So therefore they learned out, Mikan le'naira mayrasa. What this pasuk is talking about is, we learn from here, a naira mayrasa, she's already married, but only half married. In other words, she's still living in the father's house. Shavia baila mefir nedarah. That the father and the husband together are the ones that nullify her neder. That's the source. So now the Gemara we have here two sources for this. So the Gemara is going to ask what each one does with the other pasuk. Tana the Bei Rabbi Shmuel. So according to Tana the Bei Rabbi Shmuel, the pasuk that we quoted before, Im hoya isiya leish, so that extra pasuk, my Ovid lay, what does he learn from there? If that pasuk is not the source to say that the father and the husband together will nullify the neder in the time of Eidusin, because you learn it from this pasuk here that he brought. So what do you learn out from that pasuk? And for the Gemara, Maikim leidach derava. He learns from there another halacha that Rava teaches, and the Gemara doesn't spell out what it's referring to, or actually some Agoyres say, I see the Ran is going to say, Maikim like Ke'idach de Rabbe, another halacha that Rabbe says, and this is later on the Afayin. And over there, Rabbe darshans from the double Lashon, Im Hoya Isiya. Why does it say a double Lashon, Hoya Isiya? So he says, what it's teaching me is, Salacha we're going to learn actually right over here soon on this Amud, that what happens when the husband dies, in whose Rishos is this girl right now? In other words, after Eidusin. If the husband dies after Eidusin, so he says she goes back to the father's rishus, where she was, that now the father could be meifed and the Nedarim alone. From where do we know this? Because it says, Mhoya Isiya, double Lashon. Just like the first time she got married to this husband, so she's still half in the father's rishus. So too, if the husband dies, she goes back to the father, and she gets married a second time, Eidusin, so again, she'll be in the father and the husband's rishus. So therefore, this pasuk is coming to teach me this halacha of Rava. Now the Gemara asks the reverse question, V'Rava, or the Gersa here is V'Rabbe. V'Rabbe, so Rabbe is the one that actually said that this whole halacha, that during Eidusin, the father and the husband could both be meifed the neder, you learn it out from this pasuk. Im hoya isiya leish. This is the source of the whole halacha that they both are meifed the neder together. So hi, the Tana the Bei Rabbi Shmuel, my Ovid lay, this pasuk that it says at the end of the Parshas Nedarim, when it says Ben ish leishtoi, Ben av lebitoi. So Rabbi Shmuel, that pasuk that Rabbi Shmuel brought, so what does Rabbi learn from that pasuk? So the Gemara answers, Mi boya le loymar, he needs that pasuk to teach me another halacha. That is, Shabal meifir nedarim shebeinoi lebeinoh. That the husband could nullify the nedarim of his wife in any matter that's between him and her. What does that mean? What's the chiddush over here? So as we'll see later in the Gemara, and we learn this out clearly from the Psukim, that a husband cannot nullify all of the nedarim of his wife. He could only nullify such nedarim that are inui nefesh, la'anis nefesh. That's what it says in the pasuk. If she takes a neder that's an affliction, that's a pain for her. So here, from this pasuk, we learn out there's another category of nedarim that he could be mefer. And that is any kinds of nedarim that are going to put any anything comes between the husband and the wife. For example, she makes a neder that I'm not going to serve you, I'm not going to prepare something for you, I'm not going to cook for you, and so on. So that's a neder, even though there's no inui nefesh for her, but it's bein lebeina. So we learn it out from this pasuk here. It says bein ish leishtoi, bein av lebitoi, that any neder that's made that affects between husband and wife, that the husband could be made for it. That's what this pasuk is used for. Okay, so that's according to Rabbi that we learn out from here. And apparently, according to Rabbi Shmuel, even though he does learn out from this pasuk, bein ish leishtai, the halacha mentioned before, that the husband and the father together could do the hafara at the time of Edison, but apparently he also learns out from this pasuk, this halacha as well, that husband and wife, anything between them, the husband could be mefer. Okay, now the Gemara continues the sugya here regarding this halacha of the husband and the wife, the husband and the father that is, jointly being made for the neder of this woman, and the Gemara has a few different ibayas about this. Today we're going to learn one ibaya. Ibaya loho, the shaila was asked as follows. This that we say that the husband and the father are both made for the neder, what does this mean? So before I read the Gemara inside, let me just clarify here. When I taught this on the previous daf over here, when it was on Friday, so I said that from the Gemara, from the Ran, it seems that the pshat in this would be that the father's hafara is 0. The husband's hafara is also 0. Together, it becomes a hafara. But as we'll see right over here in the Gemara, that's not the way to define it. The father's hafara is apart, and the husband's hafara is apart. Now the question though is, how do we understand each part of the hafara separately, and how do they combine together? And the Gemara explains what the shaila here is. Baal, let's say, if the husband himself did the hafara, or for that matter, let's say the father himself did the hafara, so does that accomplish that meges, gayes, that cuts? In other words, it only nullifies 50% of the neder, so it cuts. Oi miklash kolish, it doesn't cut 50% of the neder. Rather, what it does is you weaken the entire neder. The quality and the takeif and the strength of the neder, you're not affecting only 50% and then the husband or the father, the other 50% remains, but rather you weaken the entire neder. And the Gemara explains right here what would be the practical relevance of this question. Where would there be an nafkamina? So heiche kami bayalan, regarding what kind of a case is this question really applying to? So for example, the Nodra mitrein zaysin, she made a neder not to eat from a shear of 2 kizaysim, two olive sizes of whatever food it is. Right, so the shear to be over on a neder, to get malchus, is like always, the shear of eating anything, is kizayis. So her neder was 2 kizaysim. V'shama orus ve'efila. And her husband heard, and he nullified his part of the neder. And now, v'achaltonun, she went and she ate both of these kizaysim. So it's going to be the halacha. Will she be chayiv malchus for this or not? So the Gemara explains, this is where the difference will be. If you're going to say that the husband that nullified his part of the neder, so he nullified 50% of the neder, in other words, 1 kizayis of the neder is nullified, and the other kizayis is not affected at all. The neder on the other kizayis is fully in effect. So then Lakya, she gets malchus for eating these 2 kizaysim, because when she ate both kizaysim, so 1 kizayis of these 2 kizaysim that she ate was still completely aser. But if you're going to say that really what happened over here is when the husband was made for the neder, so he weakened the entire neder, that now this is sort of a 50% neder for the entire neder. If so, he's sudabamu. So true, she was still over iser because it's not fully nullified, but because it's partially nullified, so the quality of the neder is not strong enough that she should be chayiv malchus. This would be the practical nafkamina. So what's the halacha? So the Gemara brings here a braise to resolve this question. Huh?
Where is taking the base?
What do you mean? What do you mean base? This is the shaila. Says Halam the shaila. The Gemara is asking over here. The Gemara is saying we see that the Torah says that there's a combination of the husband and the father in the hafara of the neder. How do you understand the definition of the gather of this combination? Is it 50-50? Each one sort of has their part, or no? It's more than that. It's more in the eichus of it. Each one has a certain chelek in the quality of the neder. It's sort of that's what it seems like the Gemara's question is. Is it a joint hafara in the kamos of the neder, or in the eichus of the neder? Right.
The question is why.
But Vegas guys has some rationale to it.
And
A Malkish Kolish,
So-
either
yeah.
it's a nether or it's not a nether.
Right.
You can't say it's a half a nether.
no, so that's the chiddush over here. But there is such a concept. The very fact.
Where does it come
So
from?
here you see this idea. The very fact that the Torah says you need both of them for hafara means that when you have 50% hafara, it's a nether which is a compromise. It's a
Where do I
compromise
find that?
nether.
Where do I
Right
find
here, right over here.
No, where I find it anywhere else.
Okay, it's a good
Because
question.
I can think about it. Doesn't mean like I can ask a question doesn't mean it's a question.
Yeah. Okay. The Gemara. Huh?
First
You
base.
want to start asking questions, you got to ask questions. But
You can't, but the Gemara could.
Yeah. The Gemara is going to bring here a brisa. Let's see. The Gemara will bring a brisa, and it will show that this is actually a machlokes of Beishamai and Beisilul. Let's see. But this brisa is quite long, and okay. So we'll see at the end. We have to wait till the end of the brisa. Toshema. So the brisa says as follows. Now here, this brisa, before we learn it inside, just to tell you what's going to happen over here, there's a lot of cases in this brisa. So this brisa is going to speak about what happens if one of them die. The father dies or the husband dies. What happens? Who now gets the rights to be made for the neder? So the general rule is that when the husband dies, this girl goes back completely into the father's possession. Now the father has the full rights to be made for the neder. But on the other hand, though, if the father dies, and now this husband that's half married to her, right, only Edison, the koyach of the father does not go over to the husband. He does not get the rights from the father. That's the general rule. That's what this brayse is based on. But there's different details of how this could apply. What exactly happened over here? When do I actually say that the father gets the koyach to be made for the nedarim? When not? There's a lot of cases here. Let's see. So, Emes Hayomru, the brayse says, when was it said Meisabal, that if the husband passes away, nisreikna rishos la'av, that what happens is it gets emptied out or it gets poured out. This girl, the rights over her, goes over to the father. What is that? And basically, the Brisa is going to bring a few cases that are going to point out as long as the husband, when he was alive, didn't validate the neder. If he validated the neder already in his lifetime, and now he dies, so the father won't be able to be mevatlet because the husband already validated it. So it's only if the husband did not validate that. So when is that? Bizman shalei shoma bal kodim sheyamos. See, either the husband did not hear the neder before he passed away, so he never knew about it, and therefore he had no rights over it. B'chlal. This is b'chlal the halacha regarding a neder. Your whole koyach, the koyach of the father or the husband, to nullify any neder is only once you hear about it. That's what sort of activates your rights over this neder. If you never heard about it, so you had no connection to it. So he'd never heard about this neder, the husband, and he died. Oi.
The Baal and the Ur is the same person?
Yes. Oi. Or, now let's be guided over here, like it says in the Bach, and like it says in all the Rishonim. Sheshoma, so the Bach says, the gear series, Sheshoma vehefer. The husband did hear about the neder, and he already nullified the neder. Oi. The next case is Sheshoma vishosak. The husband heard about the neder, but he was quiet, didn't respond. Umeiz bay bayon, and he died on the same day that he heard the neder. Which means that if he died on the same day that he heard the neder, you can't consider the fact that the husband heard and was quiet that he validated the neder, because he died in the middle of the day. He didn't get a chance to. Only by if the day is over and he was quiet, then that validates the neder passively by him not saying anything. But if he died in the middle of the day, so he never validated the neder. So Zuhi Shashaninu, regarding all these cases, this is what was taught in the Mishnah. Later over here in the Masechtas, we'll see Meis Abal, if the husband passes away, Nisreikna Rishos La'av. So she gets emptied out into the Rishos of the father, that is, and the father is the one that now could be made for the neder alone. Sagt the Mishnah weiter, or the Brisa rather, weiter, Avol, Im Shoma Vekayim. If the husband, when he was alive, heard the neder, and he clearly went and validated it. Or he not actively validated it, he passively validated it. How's that? Sheshoma Vishosak. He heard the neder, and he was quiet. Umeis b'yom shalachrav. He only passed away on the next day. So the whole day he was quiet. That validates the neder already. Once the husband validated the neder, even if he passes away, ein yochel lahofer. So even though now she goes into the rishus of the father, but regarding this neder that the husband validated, the father will not be able to uproot it. Weiter, the Brisa says, here's another case where the Brisa says that when the father, again, the rule, when the father passes away, that she does not go into the rishus of the husband. Shama via, if the father heard the neder, v'hofer law, and the father nullified the neder, and v'lehispik ba'al shmoya shemei sa'av, and even if the case is that the husband did not hear about this neder until the father passed away. So the Ran explains, the Brais here is saying a chiddush, because like I mentioned before, if the husband doesn't hear about this neder until the father passes away, so the husband really had no rights over this neder, he had no connection to this neder in the father's lifetime when the father was made for the neder. He didn't know about it, b'chlal. So at that time when the father was made for the neder, the father was made for the neder alone. His afara is very strong. And nevertheless, the halacha will be that when the father passes away, so even though this is a very weak neder now, nevertheless, the husband does not get the rights to be made for any leftovers, so to speak, that there is from this neder. Zui Shishaninu, regarding this, is what it said in the Mishnah, Mei Sa'av, if the father passed away, and even if the father already compromised the neder very much by doing a hafara when he was alive, Loi Nisreikna Rishus Labal, she does not get emptied out into the Rishus of the husband. Weiter the Mishnah says, or the Braisa says, Shama Baila. What happens if the case is that the husband heard the neder v'hafela, and he also nullified the neder, and v'lohispik ha'av l'shmoya at shemei sabal, and the father did not hear of this entire neder until the husband passed away. So over here, since the husband nullified this neder before the father heard about it, b'chlal, so there's a very strong svara to say that the neder is a very weak neder at this point, because when the husband nullified the neder, he's the only one that knew about it. The father had no idea about this neder. Still, the Braisa says the halacha will be zuhi shesheninu. This is also going to be the same, like we said before, that mei sabal, if the husband passes away, nisreiknot rishos la'af, that she gets emptied out, she goes into the rishos of the father, and the father now could be made for this neder. Next case the Mishnah says, and over here the Mishnah is going to give you another case where she does not go into the rishos of the husband after the father passes away. And there's another chiddush regarding this case. Shama Baila, what happens if the husband heard this neder? The hafer law, and the husband nullified the neder. V'loihis b'ka'av l'shmoya at shemeis, and the father did not hear anything about this neder until the father passed away. So the father had no idea about this neder b'chlal. The husband is the only one that was made for this neder, and now the father passes away. So what do you have over here? You have already a neder that the husband was already made for. So it's a very, very weak neder. So l'chayre, in this case, you might think, so now the husband is still alive, why shouldn't he be able to be made for the rest of the neder? It's not like the father ever had any connection to this neder. When the father was alive, he didn't even hear about this neder. So maybe, even though before we said that a father does not get the rights of this girl after the father passes away, but over here, the father never knew about this neder, so he's not getting it from the father. He was made for the neder, his part, and the father never knew about it. Now the father passes away, so the father's out of the picture, so you may think that now the husband should be able to be made for the rest of the neder. Still the Braisa says, Ein abal yochel lahafer, the husband will not be able to nullify the rest of the neder, she'en abal mefer elo b'shutfis, because the whole koyach of a husband to nullify the neder is only in partnership with the father. In other words, even though over here the father l'chayra never heard about the neder and he's not yarshening or he's not getting her from the father, but it doesn't matter. A husband that never has the ability to nullify the neder of his wife in the time of Edison alone. The final case of this Braisa, and this is the case that the Gemara is going to bring as a raya to the question that it asked before regarding the two parts of the husband and the father being made for the neder. Shama aviyah v'hafer law, if the father is the one that heard the neder, and he nullified his part of the neder. V'lo hispik abal l'shmoya, and the husband did not hear about the neder. At shemeis, and the husband is the one that passed away. So now, the husband passes away, so she should be going back to the rishos of the father. And the father should have the ability to be mefer the remainder of the neder, that if the husband would hear, he would be the one be mefer it. So now the father should be able to be mefer it. So the Braisa says, So now the father will be mefer again. So again, doesn't mean that he's mefer the part that he was already mefer, but now he will go ahead and be mefer that other percent of the neder that the husband did not get a chance to be mefer. Okay, so now in this final case, Amar Rav Nosson said, Hein divrei Beis Shammai. This is only the opinion of Beis Shammai that in this case, the father that was mefer part of the neder and the husband passed away, that the father could now be mefer the rest of the neder. However, Beis Hillel say, Ein yachal lahafer. In this case, the father will not be able to take the remainder of the neder and be mefer it. Why not? What's the explanation for this? So the Gemara goes straight into the raya, to the question that we asked before. What happens if one was made for the neder? Let's say only the father was made for the neder. Does that mean that he was made for only 50%, only one half of the neder? He was made for that half fully? That's what the Gemara calls before Megas Gayas. Or does it mean that the father was made for 8% of the entire neder? He weakened the entire neder, miklish kolish. So the Gemara says that is the explanation of the machlokes of Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel over here. Shmami no. From here we could understand that Beis Shammai megas gayas. According to Beis Shammai, what happens is the father, in this last case here, the father was made for half of the neder. When he does that, so now 50% of the neder is completely off. What's left? 50% of the neder that only the husband could be made for. And the husband didn't hear about it and passed away. So now when the husband passes away, so there's a 50% of the neder that's still fully in effect. And the father, Nisreikna, goes to the Rishus of the father, and the father could be made for that other 50%, 100%. So that's why Beis Shammai says that the father could be made for the other chelik. But Beis Hillel, according to Beis Hillel, we'll have to say that the pshat is as follows. Miklash kolish. When the father was made for his half of the neder, he wasn't just made for 50%. He weakened the status of the entire neder. Once it's the entire neder is weakened, this is not something that after the husband passes away, that the father now gets the rights to be made for the rest of this neder. This idea that the father gets the rights to be made for the rest of the neder when the husband passes away is only in a case when you have a full neder in effect, or you have at least half of the neder that's fully in effect. A full neder, we say that once the husband passes away, the father is the one that has the rights of the behavior of his daughter, and he gets that koyach to be made for the rest of the neder. But in this case, once the father was made for a part of the neder, and now the husband passed away, so now the entire neder is weakened. So that chelik that belonged to the husband, and the husband's not here anymore, and comes to the father, what's the father getting? The father is getting a very weak, compromised neder. A weak, compromised neder is not something that we return to the father, that he has the rights to be made for his daughter. Because it's hanging in the air, it's not a strong neder. We only give back to the father the rights of a full neder, that he has the koyach of the behavior of his daughter to be made for this. Not a half a neder. And that's why Beis Hillel says that in this case, the father never gets back the rights for this neder. Now, you may ask, what's going on with the other cases that we learned here in the Braisa? We said in the other cases of the Braisa, when the husband passes away, so then the remainder of the neder goes back to the father, even, and not the remainder, but in other words, even if the father was made for the neder, but once the husband passes away, now the father gets the rights to be made for the neder. Why don't we say that once the husband was made for it, it's a weak neder, and therefore there's not enough of a significant neder for the father to be made for? So the difference is very simple, that over there, if the husband was the one that was made for the neder, and then the husband passed away, so when he passes away, his afara also becomes null and void. So there's no afara here either. So what the father is getting is a daughter which has a full neder still in effect. So that the father gets the koyach to be made for. In this case, in the last case of this braisa, it's the father that was made for the neder. And he never passed away, the husband passed away. So therefore, he's getting now from the husband a neder that is already weakened. So that status of a neder, a weakened neder, the father doesn't have the rights to go and deal with it and to be made for the rest of this neder. That's the basis of Beis Hillel's opinion. So Shema Mino, from here we have a raya that this shaila we had is the machlokes between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel.